Yes, another day, another action roguelike, as today we look at Trinity Fusion from Angry Mob Games. Trinity Fusion is set across a multiverse where every world has a unique purpose. At the center of it all lies Prime. I don't know, it's like the Washington of Trinity Fusion or something. Unfortunately, many of these worlds are being infected by nasty beasts and robots that want to raise all sorts of hell, and of course you'll need to step in and set the world or worlds right again. It's pretty standard sci-fi stuff, but the writing is not terrible. There are some decent concepts in place here and room for a solid story to be told. Voice performances, on the other hand, that could use some work. I'll touch on that a little bit more later, but maybe they could just cut that altogether. Being in early access, Trinity Fusion is obviously not feature complete yet. As of now, the developer is saying it will be around 12 to 18 months before this one launches out of early access, with the final build featuring all biomes, all levels, and multiple endings. As for this version, the core mechanics are intact, but not all of the story has been fleshed out. Not all the areas are accessible. Basically, the combat engine is mostly constructed and in place, but it's not a finished game otherwise. The developers do have a nice roadmap laid out on the official Steam page, so be sure to check that out if you want to have a good idea for how development plans to play out. Anything can go wrong though, you never know. Alright then, as for the game's settings, there's not a ton going on. You have volume controls, a few video options, including a Steam Deck quality preset, which is really nice. By the way, this game is fully playable on Steam Deck, and it's a great way to play. You can change your language. The game does have aim assist, screen shake, hyper mode, but not a ton going on. The game does feature controller and keyboard support, with controller being recommended. Trinity Fusion also features 3 characters to choose between, 2 of which will need to be unlocked. I unlocked one of them, the green-haired Kara, but there is also Naira and the character you'll start as, Altera, though technically the entire show is being run by an almighty cyber being named Maya. Actually, the core gameplay is feeling pretty tight and responsive so far for an early access game. Your goal is to travel between different worlds, getting stronger as you go, and eventually taking down bosses to advance the story. Each character has a primary attack as well as energy weapon attacks. These can range from ice that freezes enemies, and bosses too, which is kinda cool, to gravity balls to flames for burning them. Dashing and sliding is a big part of the game, as you are invulnerable to most attacks while doing so, and it honestly feels great to slide around enemies and dish out damage while they narrowly miss you. There is some platforming here, and depending on the character, you have double jumping as well. There's consumables, which are attached to the D-pad, and some other cool special attacks as well. Controls were responsive throughout, the platforming isn't half bad, and mechanically, the game feels quite good. I really enjoyed the combat. The actual gameplay loop doesn't offer many surprises for fans of this genre. You are dropped into a world with a rather ugly Metroidvania-style map, slowly filling in the more you explore. There are icons, but it's just kind of hard to decipher what everything is. I can't say I got lost too often because each area is fairly straightforward, but I do think this map could label things a little bit better because as of now, it's functional, but definitely not exceptional. Just as you would expect as you traverse these areas, there is currency to be gathered, secret walls to be crushed, and even weapons that you can buy, though you'll also be able to find plenty of those along the way. I think the weapon variety is pretty good here as well, with all of them being mostly fun to use, and while the map isn't amazing, as I mentioned, at least there is a teleport system that makes getting around a bit better, though the worlds are not what I would describe as massive either. Each map is also randomly generated, as many indie games tend to do. This roguelike is no different, with the idea being that each run will feel a bit different from the last. You either love this gameplay loop or you hate it. It's part of indie gaming now, a big part of it. After death, which is inevitable, just as you might have guessed, you can purchase some upgrades for your characters that will give them advantages like regenerating health, and off you go again. The cycle continues on. And I think that's likely the biggest hurdle Trinity Fusion faces. What does it do to stand out in a crowded genre? The answer is not that much, but that doesn't mean it isn't fun to play, because I think the developers have a pretty solid foundation in place here, with the combat engine currently being my favorite aspect of the game. I suppose the one thing that does help this game to stand out just a little bit is the fusion system, because at some point you can actually fuse your characters together and they will inherit each other's abilities, so this is kinda neat. But outside of that, there just isn't much here as far as originality is concerned. The visuals, on the other hand, are a little bit of a mixed bag. Some of the environments look great, while other worlds are a bit drab and washed out. Character models of the leads look really nice, but enemy designs are a bit blah and uninspired. Still, there are nice visual effects here, and overall, it's not a terribly ugly game. It looks alright. The sound design is also pretty good, with enemies crying out when you slay them, satisfying gushy, kinda gross sounds when you kill them, a moody electronic soundtrack in the background, and voice acting, which, okay, I mentioned this before, it's not very good. But overall, in terms of visuals and audio, the game looks and runs pretty great, whether you're on Steam Deck or PC. You will get a full 60 FPS on Steam Deck, and I played around with that version for a while. It's really great. I just gotta say, how cool is it to see games running really awesome on a portable device? I think it's lovely that the developers had the Steam Deck in mind while programming this game, and it shows. Trinity Fusion is shaping up to be a nice little roguelike that may not change the world, but features some great combat that I had a ton of fun with. The story setup is interesting enough, but players might be frustrated to see certain areas locked off, as again, this is early access. You'll literally go to portals and it will say, oh, you can't go here yet. That's kind of a bummer. All of that said, for an early access game, there's a lot to like here. Even now, there have definitely been worse examples. I look forward to revisiting Trinity Fusion when it is feature complete, and if you do decide to jump in early, at least there's a good amount of content out of the gate with some really enjoyable combat and an addictive enough loop. Worth keeping on your radar for sure.
And you will be destroyed.
I've thought of all sorts of raging animals with less than what I have now. I can fight you.
Oh, you won't be fighting us. We knew the engineers would make pests of themselves. We've devised a defense system for this place that should be quite sufficient for the purpose of destroying you. Goodbye, human.